Welcome to the Talking Risk podcast. We discuss all things risk, hazard mitigation, insurtech, industry insights, and more. I'm your host, Brian Harris, Risk Control Director with FCCI Insurance Group, and with me is Ralph Hines, Risk Control Specialist with FCCI Insurance Group. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a special guest joining us for Talking Risk. Bob Krueger from Safety First comes in to talk with us about all the great things that Safety First does, as well as being part of our Vendor Alliance partner. And today we'll be talking fleet safety, driver MVRs, dash cams, telematics, you name it. So first off, welcome, Bob, to the program today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Safety First and yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. This is Bob Krieger. I am our VP of Client Relations here at Safety First. Safety First is a risk management company that helps drivers and fleets mitigate risk while they're out on the road. So, our main purpose is about risk identification and mitigation. And we've got a bunch of different services that help along those ways.
Good deal. And one of the things about Safety First being a part of our vendor alliance, you guys have been around a long time in the industry. And I think that Safety First has a neat history. And, sort of you guys at Safety First have tracked along with the changes in technology and how things have advanced over the years. And it has, changed the kinds of ways that you can deliver service to customers. So why don't you talk about like that timeline? How did Safety First start? What was the go-to thing that you guys offered, and sort of trace that a little bit to where we are today?
Yeah, definitely, Ryan. Thanks. So, One Safety First has been around now for 25 years. So we started back in 1998, and we started with a call center and a sticker. And that sticker was a 1-800 How's My Driving sticker. And that in itself, in that program, it's a huge, very accountable program that has helped us grow over those years. But simply, we're putting a decal on the back of a vehicle and saying, motorist, if you have a problem or a compliment, give us a call and give us your feedback on this driving behavior that you're seeing. So we started taking those calls and adding more vehicles to the list of calls that we could get. And now today we've got over 500,000 decals out on the road. So we get a lot of calls about different driving behaviors going on. A lot of bad, a little bit of good. But as we started to do that, we really started to identify risk that was going on. And that's what we do very well, is identify what type of risk is happening. So as we're taking those calls from those drivers, we're really kind of interrogating them to find out really what's going on. What's that behavior that that other driver is doing? And then we're thinking about how we can correct those. So as the driver is talked about with that motorist observation report that they receive, there'll be some coaching that goes on, but we're also documenting to say about how many and what types of behaviors we're seeing. So at the end of the month, I can go to the fleet and say, hey, did you know that your biggest problem was that your drivers weren't using their turn signals? Right? Now I've identified an issue. Uh, Now we want that client to mitigate that risk. Right? And how do you do that? Well, you have to send that message. Hey, drivers, please use your turn signals, right? And or you can give them some driver training to help them along the way. So as we expanded with our services of the safety hotline, we started offering driver training programs to mitigate against the behaviors that we're seeing. So today we have about 25 courses. They're all under about 5 minutes long, maybe 10 questions at the end that kind of reiterate those behaviors that we're seeing that we get the calls in on. So it really helped us build that list. So one service kind of complements another, right? Now, as we're building and we're growing with these services of driver safety, with the hotline and the driver training, people said, hey, safety first, we really need a place to store all this information on our drivers, as well as just kind of keep track of it. So from there, we created a database called eDriver File. And now today you can go in there, you can house your drivers, you can run MVR reports on there, you can enroll them in MVR monitoring. You can also help find out when those drivers are expiring for their licenses or any type of DOT things. So now we have this nice database on your drivers in one central location to keep track of it all, right? So as we keep growing, as we start to see more need, we continue to fill that void for our customers. So our customers have really been driving what's been asked of those fleets and over time. Now, today, we also have telematics, and we've had telematics for like 10 years, right? We're a proud Geotab reseller for the last 10 years. And through there, we also have additional integrations with dash cameras and other marketplace partners that help integrate into that world. And really, all of that data still gets housed back into our eDriver file. So again, one central location to hold your drivers, even hold your vehicles, run MVRs, identify risk, mitigate risk, get it all in one.
And that's fantastic, Bob. And I just the eDriver file tool is so valuable because it ties in all those components for a business owner who should be able to focus on running their business, and making money, which is why they're in business. So being able to have a program like eDriver File to me just makes sense. I wish everybody had eDriver File, whether they have 5 vehicles or 500 vehicles. So and it's neat that to see how technology is there now to help business owners manage fleet risk. It started with a sticker and now it has evolved into continuous MVR monitoring, telematics, dash cams, you name it. The tools are out there. We just need to encourage folks to take advantage of that stuff to help them mitigate that risk. So, with that in mind, I want to bring Ralph on board here to talk about the things that we focus on from a commercial insurance side when we're dealing with risk control and the things that we like to engage our customers about when it comes to managing that fleet. So, Ralph, I want to kick it over to you for the big three that we talk about: driver selection, driver supervision, driver training. Why don't you touch on the importance of those three things and what it can do as far as a benefit for a business owner to pay attention to those things?
Yeah, well, thank you, Brian, and it's nice to be with you, Bob. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad you're doing well. Just to back up a little bit, the risk control function, a part of this is what we do and why we meet with our customers is we got to figure out where you are. So what are your driver selection? What are your driver supervision? What kind of training are you guys doing? Because that, when you think of what we do in risk control, there's a couple different aspects. Because first of all, we're looking for insurability of our customers. We want to see where you're at, what kind of controls you have in place. And then these three controls are very important because that helps us get an understanding of where you are and how we can potentially help you. So when you think about driver selection, it's like in training and supervision. I always think about, why do you put someone in a company car if you haven't done any of this? You haven't checked their MVR, you don't supervise them, and you provide no training to them. That's just that equals up to a bad day. And what it's doing is putting your organization at risk, right? So driver selection, this is more than just an MVR. It includes, reference checks, written applications, verification of a license, your experience, drug testing. So there's a bunch of qualifications that we're putting in as part of the driver selection process because we want to understand what we have, because all these things are, and when you look at the MVR, all of these things are predictor of a person's driving history. So we consider the best in class operation when we're doing driver checks, and based on a point system, for low and high risk drivers. It's and I could share something with you. FCCI did a study of our driver base of all our policyholders. And if you ever heard of the Pareto principle before, it's the 80-20 rule. And it basically says that 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. Well, this is amazing to me when you think about it. I found a study that said 77% of drivers have no violations and 23% had at least one. So FCCI did a study as well. And our numbers were very comparable. And the when you have one, so 80% of our drivers have no accidents or no violations. And then 20%, or it's approximately 23%, they have no violation. They have one violation and it increases their accident chance. And each violation increases the chance of an accident by like 336%. So I find that just amazing, just that 80-20 principle. But the importance of that selection process, right? We're figuring out who we're hiring because we're putting this in our wheel, in behind our wheels. And that's the company reputation that we're putting out there. As far as driver supervision, excuse me, it's a critical component of our fleet safety program, right? And from a risk control, how it's important to us is we want to know, are they supervised? What is going on with your drivers? How can we help? Because that's part of the services we provide for them. Because driver supervision and telematics is a great tool for driver supervision, right? Because it helps you identify driving habits. And then you have a list of where you're deficient so that we can properly assist our customers with training one way or another. And the last one is the driver training. How are you training your drivers? What's the importance of this? If we're putting someone behind the wheel and they don't know what they're doing, how are they going to do it safely? So giving them training helps them understand and gives them more tools to do their job safely.
This is Talking Risk, the risk control podcast from FCCI Insurance Group. You can listen to Talking Risk online at fcci-group.com. Click on Risk Control and select the episode you want to hear. For FCCI teammates, go to Spike, Departments, Risk Control, Podcasts, then select the episode you want to hear. We'll be right back. Well said, Ralph. And I think I go back again to our vendor alliance program, identifying companies like Safety First that can help us and our policyholders address these areas. And when you think about the things that Bob has mentioned, all the products that they have something that helps us and the customer cover each of those items in the big three. Driver selection and driver screening. They've got MVR monitoring, e-driver file. Then you go to driver supervision. They have telematics and dash cams. And then on the driver training piece, they've got modules that can help with that area as well. So if it comes to helping mitigate your fleet risk, Safety First has got all those things. And I want to kick it over to Bob. I know we touched on the things that Safety First offers, and focusing in for a second on the importance of the driver screening and driver supervision piece. I want you to take a minute, if you can, Bob, and talk about the eDriver file platform and the scoring aspect of it and what that does from a driver supervision standpoint.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. Well, eDriver file, again, being a driver database, we're going to house all the events that may occur or any data that we're going to pull on that driver. And essentially, we're going to put that into a scorecard, right? To kind of show that number of who's doing well and who's not doing well, right? If you had a list of 100 drivers, and again, as Ralphie mentioned, the 20 that you may see as a risk, again, if we can show you even 7 of those 20 ahead of time, then we're making ourselves a little bit safer, right? And that's my goal based on any data that we're going to collect is we're going to score it. And scoring goes two ways. It used to be what we call a golf score or a school score. The golf score meant you started at zero and you wanted to be a zero. But it's kind of hard to motivate and say, hey, Brian, you're doing great. You're at zero today, right? That's not motivating. So we flipped it around and made it the school score, where everybody starts with 100 and you work your way down into a failing grade, right? Where let's call it 60, maybe that failing grade. So if you're if we run your MVR and you have, say, one speeding ticket, you may take 15 points off of that record and you'd fall down into an 85. Again, if you had three speeding tickets, that obviously bring you down below that 60 and in a risk category, which would be unacceptable. Now, you as a fleet, you may have a fleet policy and you may also work with an insurance policy. You got to make sure that they both coincide to tell the same story, right? And with those, that if you do identify a risk, that you also mitigate it or have some adverse action that happens within that risk identification. So, for an example, if you said my driver fell to a 65, you may automatically give them some driver training to maybe put some points back on the record and give them, put them into a medium risk versus a high risk. So it's very flexible in that way. And again, we're also collecting various points of data on the drivers. So we may add their accident history into the system where you're going to say an accident maybe equals a set amount of points. Or as I mentioned before, with the safety hotline, say you get a call in, what we call a motorist observation report. Maybe that's 5 points off of your record. Maybe you had a really bad telematics week and that score that also gets scored on a weekly basis. Maybe that's integrated into your overall risk score. Again, you're starting to get that really granular data about who is your risk, right?
Good deal. Yeah, I appreciate that. And thinking about the different things that you can sort of include in that scorecard, you mentioned how the telematics piece that can be incorporated into the scorecard system if a customer's got that as well as the monitoring and all those other, even the safety hotline. Um, let's take a minute and talk about telematics systems because I think back 10, 15 years, telematics has been around a while now. And maybe in the past, a lot of businesses looked at it as cost prohibitive, or they didn't really implement it to its full functionality. Why don't you sort of walk us through a little bit of how the telematics platform has evolved over the years to where we are today, and maybe dispel some of those concerns or fears around cost and driver hesitation to have something like that on their vehicle. Where have we come from, and where are we at today with regards to telematics?
Yeah, so telematics has been around for more than 20 years, right? We've been tracking vehicles left and right and doing those things, but it has greatly evolved, even over the last 10 years. As I mentioned, we are, 10 years as a Geotab reseller, which is the largest telematics provider in the entire world. There's over 4 million devices that are connected, right? When we first started with them, there was 100,000. So we've seen the growth and seen the experience and seen the goods and the bads and the shortfalls that people have done within the telematics. One, I'd say that makes me experienced to know what to do and what not to do. But as we talk about the benefits of telematics, I think that there's so much there now and people are wanting so much data in real time to make decisions that it's almost a must that you do have that in your fleet, right? So just as a couple things as to how GPS is, right? We look at certain pillars that we want to try and tackle when it comes to telematics. So we want to try and impact it in a safety world. We want to impact it into a compliance world, right? Compliance meaning like ELD, large trucking, those types of things. The product is fully ELD compliant. Expandability, right? Planning for the future, right? There was a plan when they were at 100,000 to get to 5 million, right? Now the plan continues. But how do we continue to expand within the realm and know that really GPS isn't the only tool that's there to help you? Next, expandability or sustainability, right? How are we making the world more sustainable, right? So looking at like CO2 carbon emissions and how we impact the world with greenhouse gas. And then really kind of gets down to optimization, right? Once you start getting all of those things down, you can start to optimize either your route or even your business, right? So I'm going just a little bit deeper into some of this information, right? So when you first sign on for telematics, you're going to start thinking about GPS and dots on a map. Really, that's where your vehicles are on the map, real time, right? So with that, you get to see exactly where they are and where they've gone. We call it the breadcrumb trail, right? Now you can see how fast they got there, how long they were sitting there, how long it took them to get back, and really when were those on and off hours that those people were driving. But that's all just GPS data that we're collecting, right? So that's kind of your beginning point. You start to evolve and you're going to start to know more about that vehicle, right? And with that vehicle, you get connected to the engine. So you start to get more data. So what's the easiest thing on the vehicle? Well, you get to know how many miles that vehicle has on it immediately, all the time, instantly, right? And before telematics, before that, you'd either have to go out to the vehicle and check to see what that mileage is, or rely on a fuel feed or a maintenance invoice to try and get those done, which again, trying to get that at your fingertips to make decisions isn't a sustainable tool. So again, now even just knowing that mileage and knowing how many miles are put on that vehicle every day, every week, every month, and being able to compare that to what your expectations are or other vehicles that are in your fleet, you can start to make better decisions, right? Not only are you getting the mileage, you can also find out if your check engine light comes on, which is always good to know when you're the Wizard of Oz as a fleet manager sitting, watching your fleet from afar. You also get to know when that oil life goes low, when it's time for an oil change. Being able to proactively hit your driver up and say, "Hey, driver, make sure you're going in to your local preferred repair facility for service because I can even see that the vehicle needs an oil change." Right? Now, once you're doing things like that, you're really going to start to show your drivers that you're overseeing your fleet more than you were. And that in itself helps change behaviors. Once you, as a fleet manager, a fleet owner, start to show your employees that you've got a better keen eye on what's going on, they're going to start acting just a little bit straighter than where they were before. Right? So we talk more about vehicles, just you also can tell if the vehicle's battery is going to die. Wouldn't it be great to get a text message in the morning that says, "Hey, don't use vehicle 123 because we know it's got a bad battery. And don't put your driver out on the road and let them get stranded with a tow bill, a rental bill, a repair bill, and downtime on that vehicle." Right? That's proactive. That's putting money back in your pocket right there and time back in your pocket, right? So that's just vehicle sections. And I kind of tipped on a little bit of your drivers. So let's talk about what does it do from your driver perspective? Again, I said they know you're watching now, right? But here you're going to be able to tell the risks that they do on an everyday driving room. You're going to know, do they wear their seatbelt? Are they speeding? Do they take turns in your vehicle too hard? Right? All of these things get documented. And what we do is we put them into a scorecard, again, to deliver back to you, the fleet, on a daily or weekly basis to say, "Hey, here's the people that are getting the most exceptions to the rules that we're setting forth as to what a good driving fleet is." Right? Now, if I'm going to give you all of that data, I hope that you not only talk to your drivers that are in those scenarios, but reward the drivers that are doing good. Because the more money that you put into this, not just money, but the more effort and rewards that you put into behaviors, the better behaviors you're going to get. If you put a Yeti out in the break room and say, hey, the best score over 90 days gets a Yeti, everybody's going to go chase that Yeti. And for 90 days, you're going to get zero claims in your insurance because nobody's bumping anything or breaking anything. And at the end of the 90 days, you give away a Yeti and you had zero claims. That's well worth it. I would rinse and repeat it every quarter, right? So, as I just said, all of these different areas just in telematics, I feel it helps you make a better business decision with the data that we're going to provide you. Whether it's that you're overusing a vehicle, whether you're underusing a vehicle, right? Maybe you just need to see that you've got two bad drivers and they need some driver training. Again, we're going to give that to you all at your fingertips. And in a lot of ways, automate the things that help you automatically mitigate those risks that we identify.
If there's a risk control topic you'd like us to cover, or if you have questions about FCCI's risk control services, send us an email, info@fcci-group.com. FCCI Insurance Group is a multi-regional provider of comprehensive property and casualty insurance and surety products. We cover businesses in 20 states plus Washington, D.C. Our local presence, service, and expertise combined with the knowledge and relationships of our independent agency partners creates a winning combination that sets us apart. To find an FCCI agent partner, visit our website at fcci-group.com and click Find an Agent. Are you an agent interested in working with FCCI? Visit our website at fcci-group.com and click on For Agents. I'm going to audible here and ask you to look into your crystal ball. Okay. So if Bob has a crystal ball and he looks into the future just a little bit, consider this. And because if I put myself in the shoes of a business owner and I'm thinking about going with safety first to get telematics on my fleet, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to be positive in how I use the data so that I can improve performance. I'm going to reward good behaviors that's going to make a difference. So I do all that. I outlay the cost to get the devices. I start using the data. I'm driving down my risk. It's showing up in reduced claims. In Bob's crystal ball, what does it look like in the future where this whole thing is going? What kind of benefits do I, the business owner, get out of this big picture down the road? Where not just my data, but everybody's data that's going into that cloud. What is it going to do for me and everybody else in the future? How does it save me money? How does it reduce my insurance? Will it be able to compare me to other fleets like me in the future? Can I take something to my insurance company or my agent and say, look, here's what I've been doing, and here's me compared to somebody else? Crystal ball, Bob.
Oh man, that's a good one, Brian, and I love it actually. So, the one thing, if I had a crystal ball, I would love to be able to like put together. I would love to be able to go to a fleet. Hey, fleet. Hey, you really shouldn't drive vehicle 123 tomorrow because it's going to get into an accident. If I could predict the future that that vehicle is going to be in an accident tomorrow, and I can tell you to stop it, I've done my job. Man, pat me on the back, right? I've saved some accidents, maybe even saved a life. Um, that would be my goal, right? So how is things like that happening? Because it's actually in the works, right? So we all know with technology of AI and things like that, ChatGTP is very common of the 2023 launch of ChatGTP or whenever it was, I don't know. But again, they're applying AI technology like that to everywhere, including telematics, including dash cams. Again, it's looking at thousands of pieces of data and also saying, hey, you know what? The most accidents occur in this location. The most speeding events happen here. The most heaviest traffic is driven here, right? And they are pulling all of these things together. I've seen it happen at Geotab. I've been to their corporate office. They have 100-foot uh, boards up on the wall with all of the metadata that's being pulled and highlights of risky areas and safer areas. And again, if they could change the stoplights to say, hey, you know what? There's no traffic. Let it flow, right? That would be so cool. And again, that's not necessarily fleet futuristic. That's everybody futuristic, right? Now, again, as we're doing things, as you're saying, Brian, you are installing your telematics, you're doing everything. What can you see benefits from, right? Well, you're going to see one, just an overall safer fleet, as if you're doing it right. If you're properly engaging your fleet, talking to them about why you're putting it into the vehicles, again, rewarding them or training them depending on their behaviors that they're seeing, right? You're going to start to see some fuel savings based on either idling events or even just better driving, right? Less harsh braking events, less harsh cornering, less harsh acceleration. All of those things are going to help that overall fuel economy. Again, putting dollars back in your pocket. And you're also saving accidents, right? Accidents aren't getting any cheaper. And I think the last time I remembered a number, it was like $2,000 an accident. I'm sure it's now more, but if I can say, hey, I saved an accident or saved two accidents and helped you reduce those, again, we're definitely stepping over nickels to pick up dollars, right? We're not stepping over dollars to pick up nickels. So, again, we're looking at those bigger things of where we can save money. We're also going to help you with productivity. If I can tell you, hey, you don't use these two vehicles on the West Coast and move them to a better place in the East Coast where you're getting heavy mileage, again, you're going to help better optimize your overall business.
When I think of what you mentioned about artificial intelligence and connectivity. The entire world is becoming like a connected system. And so vehicles are now being manufactured, I think, with the computer software. I don't know how it all works, but our vehicles have the potential to be connected, so to speak. We're talking about the Internet of Things. So, if you're driving a newer fleet or you're buying new vehicles, those vehicles have the ability to be connected into that AI metaverse or whatever it's called. So I think that one of those things we sort of see in the crystal ball as well is that, Jim's Plumbing in Nashville, Tennessee, his vehicles are going to be connected into the whole Internet of Things. Yeah, regardless of whether he's using Safety First and Geotab, some GM, Toyota, somebody's going to be pulling that data, and it's going to be out there and used to identify those things. And the I guess the sky is the limit. The universe is the limit. And so each business, Jim's Plumbing, a small fleet or a super huge fleet, they're all going to be connected, which to me is mind-boggling. And a platform like Geotab is building the mechanisms by which all that data that's floating around out there in the cloud can be pulled down to its lowest level, where somebody like you or me can understand it and make something of it to help reduce our risk and also show the good things that we're doing.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Brian, with the OEMs, there are availabilities. Every vehicle now that's been made since probably 2018, so we're 5, 6 years into it now, they all have the modem, right? What we do find from a Geotab perspective is that the OEM data isn't as strong as what we would get by directly plugging into the device with the device in our vehicle. So the OEM data is getting there. It has potential to be just as good. But what we find is that, yeah, you may have a Ford vehicle, you may have a Chevy vehicle. Well, you have to have those two modems talk on the same platform, right? So how do they do that? And Geotab integrates not only the OEMs, but also asset trackers, third-party devices, as well as dash cams, all into the one to make it easy and clickable all at your fingertips.
Which is pretty cool if if I'm the business owner and I've got that system, the Geotab system, so to speak. I know where my vehicles are. I can know where my equipment is. I can know how it's being used, what time it's being operated, the whole nine yards. So it allows me to be connected to all my stuff all the time, which is pretty amazing. All right, so before we touch on dash cabs, it's time for our Hey Ralphie segment.
Hey, Ralph! Ralphie boy!
How you doing there, Ralphie boy?
Hi, Ralph.
Come on in, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph!
Hey there, Ralphie boy.
Ralphie boy!
Ralphie. Hi, yeah, Ralph. What is it, Ralph? How you doing there, Ralphie boy?
That's good, Ralph. Hey, Ralph!
Hey, Ralphie boy.
And Ralph, the thing that we're going to kick over to you today is you're going to highlight and enlighten us on a common mistake that people make when using their GPS systems.
Yes, sir. And I'd have to admit that I fall into the category of making this mistake. But the common mistake people make when using their GPS system is muting the sound or turning the sound down so they can listen to their music, they talk to the other passengers in the car. But when you think about it, that can be very dangerous because it forces the driver, to keep taking their eyes off of the road to check their GPS system. And that's what we refer to as a visual distraction as part of distraction driving. If you just think if you're adjusting or programming your GPS while driving, then you're falling into all three of the categories of distracted driving. Visual distractions, which is anything that takes our eyes off the road, manual distraction, anything that takes our hands off the wheel, and cognitive distractions, which anything takes our mind off our job of driving. For example, if you're driving 55 miles an hour and you're fiddling around with your GPS, you can travel the length of a football field with your eyes off of the road. How dangerous is that? So while the GPS and the voices can be annoying because we're trying to do other things, it can help drivers keep their eyes on the road so they can do their job. And by the way, doing your job when you're driving, that involves keeping your mind on the drive, your hands on the wheel, and your eyes on the road, just like all three of the forms of distracted driving.
Very good, Ralph. And, I think too, along the lines with what we're going to talk about with Bob right here, the dash cam piece is something that can help also minimize that kind of behavior, right? If you've got an in-cab camera that is focused on the driver, which a lot of fleets out there use both outward facing and inward facing cameras, that can help ensure that those drivers are exhibiting good behaviors and not doing things like programming the maps feature on their phone and whatnot. All right, thanks, Ralph. Appreciate that. So Bob, let's touch on real briefly here the idea of dash cams, because first, came telematics. Now the thing is dash cams, dash cameras. Talk about sort of what they do, functionality, how they're used, and what a customer can do to make the most of that data that they're acquiring through those systems.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. And dash cams, I feel, are still an emerging technology. As we look at telematics has been around for 20 years and emerged into new and better technology. I would say that in the last 5 years, we've really experienced the push for dash cams. So I feel like the technology is still in an upward rise of more and more, which is good in this day and age because a lot of the software that we're seeing with the dash cams, it's all updated over the air. So as an example, if maybe one camera that you have today doesn't have a forward feature of like tailgating, in 3 months, if they release that, you don't have to buy a new camera. It's just an over-the-air upgrade to the new to the same camera, just new technology. So I think that the emerge is going to be easier than what it took for telematics and having to put new things in the devices to help them get to the point of the over-the-air updates. Right. So, dash cams, again, everybody wants them, right? so many people kind of look at the sticker price though and say, oh, because it is more than just the telematics and things like that. But as they are looking at doing these things, really what they're trying to see is let's tell the real story of what happens during either the accident or the event that's happening, right? So most commonly it's being used because of the accident world, because you want to see what happened during the accident. Now, some drivers will get scared because they're saying, "Oh, well, this is on me during the accident." Well, hopefully you're doing the right thing while you're driving, and you shouldn't have anything to worry about, right? But I can tell you that I have seen it exonerate drivers because they were doing the right thing. Or the other drivers in the other vehicle were lying about what was happening until the camera comes out. So it's not necessarily trying to beat up on your drivers. You're trying to protect yourself to find out what really happened. If you saw what really happened, you can make the good description and make a good decision and not just go off of based of what he said or she said. Now, let's let's try and avoid the actual accident and let's talk about how how the cameras are doing those things. Now, the camera facing the driver can tell what the driver's doing. So it can tell if the driver's eating or drinking or sleeping or smoking or even on their cell phone or generally being distracted, right? None of them are good. All of them can cause accidents, and they do every day. So, and then a forward facing as well, the camera also does tailgating, or even now what they're coming out with soon is pedestrian detection, right? Now, as the camera is seeing these things, it's going to alert the driver, beep beep beep, or tell them what they're doing. Me personally, I've had a great experience where I was driving in rush hour traffic in the morning, heading to an appointment, and I reached over to my backpack to get something out of there. And just in the split second that I did that, the camera went, and I looked up and said, "Oh no," and slammed on my brakes. I was inches away from a brand new Porsche. I was fortunate and happy that I had that camera there to save me from rear-ending a brand new Porsche. Now, as a driver, I'm excited about that tool, right? So again, like once a driver sees the experience and has it in a good way, they're going to love it because it's a better tool to help them be safe, right? Help them pay attention. And that's the one thing I would always say is that if I could give one piece of advice to any driver, just overall, just pay attention. If you pay attention on the road, you shouldn't have any problems. It's all these little things that keep us going, oh, where? And again, bring your attention away from driving. So, uh, again, dash cams are the newest, the latest, and greatest from hopefully the prevention of an accident, but also the telling tale of what happens when those accidents do occur.
Thanks, Bob. And I think you made a good point talking about some of those features that are being introduced to the dash camera platform that weren't around, 5, 10 years ago. For the technology to be built into those systems that can, warn in advance of a collision or a pedestrian. Those things are fantastic. And all the behaviors that you talked about being bad, it never ceases to amaze me that even when a driver knows that there's a camera looking at them in their car, they still do those things from time to time, and those are things that get captured, and then those are, correctable opportunities, areas of improvement that a fleet manager or business owner can then go to that driver and counsel them, and as part of their overall safety program. So I think those things are good. And just from an insurance perspective, we've seen, Ralph and I have seen examples of dash camera footage that our customers have shared with us after an accident. And those clips can help our claims team do a couple things. Number one, it helps us have a real, true, accurate record of what happened during that crash. And our claims team can then either dispute something that a claimant is alleging, or it helps us if our drivers were engaged in some kind of behavior, it helps us to quickly and thoroughly and appropriately resolve those claims. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, the insurance company, the business that is our insurance policyholder customer, the public at large, driver behavior. Everybody benefits from utilizing these types of resources to help reduce that risk out there. At FCCI, risk is our business. We provide services that help business owners better understand and minimize the losses they face every day. Our experienced and credentialed professionals have worked in a wide variety of industries, including agriculture, construction, manufacturing, retail, service, and wholesale distributing. FCCI's risk control consultants meet directly with policyholders to learn the unique nature of their business, combine individual recommendations with online resources and tools to create a custom-tailored plan. Our risk control programs provide clear goals, action plans, and survey schedules to help policyholders accomplish their safety objectives. To learn more about FCCI's risk control resources, contact your agent or visit our website, www.fcci-group.com, and click on risk control. We'll be right back. All right, so, we've talked about a variety of things from safety hotline to e-driver file. We've talked about the benefits and the technology involved with dash cameras, with telematics systems. I think we're about in the home stretch of today's podcast. So I want to throw maybe the last question that I have for Bob, and he's alluded to this in some of your comments earlier, but could you give any examples maybe of actual nuts and bolts return on investment? So a customer says, this is going to cost me quite a bit of money if I implement the e-driver file, or if I'm going to spend the money for dash cams or telematics. Do you have any, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you say to a potential customer when they talk about return on investment? What's in it for me? How's it going to help me?
Yeah, so when we talk about ROI, there's hard dollars, there's time, there's a lot of different factors that you can come into to show ROI. So again, when a client signs on with, let's just call it like the safety hotline, right? We're going to see that client have a reduction in accidents from anywhere from 10 to 20% in that first year, right? Now, again, those claims could be 2, 3, depending on that size of fleet. But we could be talking in the thousands of savings that we're going to look at, right? Now, something like the decal program is less than $20 a vehicle per year. $20 per year. That's like less than $2 a month, right? I think I can show you an ROI really heavily for $2 a month on your vehicle by being able to say what public is saying about your fleet. Again, now also with that, you get some thought from your driver. If your driver's getting in your fleet vehicle and it has a sticker on the back of it that says 1-800 how's my driving, or safety is my goal, or something that's alluding to that the public can call in about that driver, they're going to drive just that much safer because of that. And again, if you can even save one accident because of that, again, you're saving thousands of dollars for something that costs you less than, a couple trips to Starbucks, right? Now, we want to start talking about a little bit more in what it costs for something like e-driver file or dash cams or telematics. What we're going to focus in on is in telematics, we're going to look at fuel savings, right? We're going to look at lessening idle expense. We're also going to be optimizing those vehicles. So again, the level of work that you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. Again, if you invest a year into telematics, I'm going to be able to tell you which vehicles you need and which vehicles you don't. If I can get rid of one vehicle for you, I'm going to save you $40,000. That's going to be, telematics is peanuts compared to those. Again, an average telematics plan is about $300 a year. So again, if you pay $300 and I can save you 40,000 just by saying you don't need that one, again, we're still way in the positives. And the reason I'm explaining this is because I don't want to say your ROI is 200%. But if you start thinking of these numbers, in certain scenarios, they could be thousands of percent. But if I just told you, Brian, you're going to save 3,000% on your stuff, you're going to kind of call me a liar until I tell you what the actual kind of numbers could show. But again, we're going to save in productivity, we're going to save in accident loss, right? And we're going to overall be safer drivers on the road. And again, have a focus of our fleet. That's the biggest thing. You tell your fleet that you're focused on them, they're going to operate at a higher level. The more you push, the better they're going to be.
Well said. And you know, you brought up a good point. Uh, if you're going to spend the money to have a platform, use it, right? You're going to get out what you put into it. Ralph, we've interacted with policyholders that have telematics, and they're not really using it
Right.
the way it could be. And you know, we can counsel them and encourage them on ways to fully utilize those tools, and we just scratch our heads and go, man, what, you know, this thing can do all of this stuff for you, but you're not maximizing it. So if you're going to spend, you might as well put in the effort to reap the rewards of all the stuff that it can do for you. And really, also, I'd like to mention, you know, you talked about in that segment on ROI about the safety hotline. And you know, we've spent a lot of time on technology, but the safety hotline is, you know, sort of like the old-fashioned, old school, tried and true, stick a decal on there. But it works. And when it comes to one of those big three, when we're talking about driver supervision, it is a tool. It's an effective tool. It's out there. You're getting feedback from other motorists on the road. So, you know, I would encourage our policyholders that maybe aren't even taking advantage of something like the safety hotline. It's still in 2024 a very effective mitigation resource for fleet safety. So, you know, and if you guys out there listening to the podcast, if you're an FCCI customer, you can reach out to Bob. There's a link to our vendor alliance program on the FCCI homepage, fcci-group.com. Just go to risk control, scroll down, and there's a vendor alliance page. You can find contact information for Safety First on there. So, Bob, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. We value the partnership and all the stuff that you bring to the table to help FCCI's customers have safer fleets out there on the road. So thank you, Bob, for joining us today.
Yeah,
And any last comments you'd like to offer before we kick it over to Ralph for his final thoughts?
yeah, thanks, Brian. It's, I just want to mention and say that I've been in the industry a long time, and I consider myself a safety expert as well as a fleet expert in the industry. And when you hire safety first on any service, you're getting our expertise. You're getting me. You're not getting a ticketing system that you submit for support. You're going to get a strategic objectives. You're going to have a one-on-one calls. You're going to have a vision so you don't get stuck in a 12-month bad pilot, right? We're going to help you progress. We're going to help you get better and do those things and consistently come up with new ideas to making sure that your fleet is fresh.
Good deal. Thanks, Bob. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that aligns with us at FCCI. Our focus is on customer service and customer experience as well. You know, we want to build relationships with our policyholders, and we want to help them achieve their goals, and we want to be accessible for them. You know, if an insured calls Ralph and says, "Hey, you know, I've got a job site, you know, over, you know, in this town tomorrow, can you go take a look?" You know, he's available to help them. And Safety First is also of the same mindset. You're there, you're approachable, you're available to help those customers meet their needs. So thank you for that. All right, Ralph, last one for you. Thinking about the vendor alliance and programs such as Safety First, how does having access to these tools help you out in the field when you're meeting with customers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the first thing like to say, by the way, partnering with FCCI and Safety First, that's a strong public testimony to the customer's commitment to safety, right? That's one of the things that's valuable for us in risk control. But when it comes to operating motor vehicles, technology can be a blessing and it can be a curse, right? That statement implies that technology can be both positive and negative. And it suggests that technology is not inherently good or bad, but rather depends on how it's used, right? And the content to which it is applied. And Safety First, after listening to this, it's pretty much a one-shop stop for all things safety as it relates to our fleet operations, right? It allows us, Safety First does, to provide resources to customers that are proven. They include training, the MVR compliance and monitoring, telematics and the cameras, all the things that Bob was talking about. We review these things with our customers, and unfortunately, a lot of times until they have that pain point, right? Until something happens to them, they don't get it and they think we're okay. But boy, we could reduce and prevent anything up front with that. I just think when a customer signs up with Safety First, again, it's just providing that, man, we are proactive, we are engaged management, we're committed to safety and protecting our employees and the general public when you think about it. There's 9 fatalities every day from distracted driving in our country. It's an epidemic, and we've said that before. So I just think, the use of Safety First benefits us because it helps identify unsafe behaviors so appropriate training can be provided. It's efficient. It has safeguards both for the company and for the driver. And it offers tools that can improve driver performance and safety. It boosts fuel economy, as Bob was mentioning, and it improves safety overall. And because of all this data that Safety First can provide, it just allows our customers to focus on training areas, I think, where it's needed the most, thereby reducing exposures and thereby saving money and time, right? All part of the business model.
Amen, Ralph. Well said. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Talking Risk. Thanks again, Bob. Thanks, Ralph, for joining us today. Everybody stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. You can listen to Talking Risk online at fcci-group.com. Click on Risk Control, then Risk Control Resources, and select the episode you want to hear. For Talking Risk, I'm Brian Harris. Recording copyright FCCI Services, Inc. 2022. The opinions expressed in this recording don't necessarily represent those of FCCI, its personnel, or affiliates. This recording is provided for informational purposes only, does not attempt to identify all potential hazards or remedial actions, and is not intended as legal or professional advice. FCCI, its personnel, and affiliates shall not be liable for any loss, death, damage, or expense arising out of your reliance upon this recording. You are solely responsible for complying with applicable law, including any changes in the law, and for the safety of your operations. Please consult your legal advisor with any questions